There is a belief so deeply embedded in American culture that questioning it feels almost unpatriotic. The belief that buying a home is the cornerstone of building wealth, that owning property is the smartest financial move most people will ever make, and that the path to financial security runs directly through homeownership. And to be clear, owning a home is not a bad decision, and for many people it makes complete sense. But the idea that a primary residence is an investment in the same way that a stock portfolio is an investment, the idea that building equity in a house is the same as building wealth, is one of the most consequential financial misunderstandings most people carry their entire lives. And today, we're going to look at what the data actually says, and more importantly, what actually builds wealth if not your house. Before we get into it, nothing in this video is financial advice. This is purely for educational purposes, and for decisions that affect your financial future, always speak with a qualified financial professional who knows your specific situation. Now, back to that belief, because dismantling it isn't about discouraging homeownership. It's about understanding what your home can and cannot do for your financial life. Let's start with the returns, because the numbers here are more revealing than most people expect. According to data tracking U.S. single-family homes from 1991 to 2024, the average annual price appreciation of a primary residence has been approximately 4.3%. That sounds reasonable until you compare it to what a simple S&P 500 index fund did over the same period, an average annual return of approximately 10.4%, including dividends. Over a 30-year period, that gap doesn't just persist, it compounds into an enormous difference in outcomes. $100,000 growing at 4.3% annually for 30 years becomes approximately $350,000. That same $100,000 growing at 10.4% annually for 30 years becomes approximately $1.9 million. Same starting amount, same timeline, 5.5 times the outcome. But the gap is actually larger than those numbers suggest, because the 4.3% figure is the gross appreciation of home prices. It doesn't account for the very significant costs that come with owning a primary residence. Property taxes typically run 1 to 1.5% of market value per year. Home insurance runs another 0.5 to 1%. Maintenance and repairs, which most financial planners estimate at 1% of home value annually, are the costs most people consistently underestimate. And then there are the transaction costs on both ends. Buying a home typically costs 2 to 5% of the purchase price in closing costs, and selling costs another 5 to 6% in agent commissions and fees. When you account for all of these, the true net return on a primary residence after costs is often closer to 2 to 3% annually in real terms. At that rate, your home is barely keeping pace with inflation, let alone building wealth in any meaningful sense. And here is the part that most people never fully reckon with. Your home cannot be partially spent. It is an all-or-nothing asset. You cannot sell 10% of your house when your daughter needs help with a down payment, or when a medical bill arrives that insurance doesn't fully cover, or when an opportunity appears that requires liquid capital. The only ways to access the wealth locked inside your home are to sell it, which means finding somewhere else to live, or to borrow against it through a home equity loan or line of credit, which means taking on debt and paying interest on your own equity. The wealth in your home is real. It shows up on your net worth statement, but it is largely inaccessible for most of the time you own the home, which is a very different thing from wealth that actually works for you. So why does this matter, and why do most people never fully see it? The answer is partly psychological and partly cultural. Buying a home forces a kind of savings discipline that most people never apply to investing. Every mortgage payment builds equity, gradually and automatically, without requiring any active financial decision. In that sense, homeownership has historically functioned as a forced savings mechanism for millions of Americans who might otherwise have spent that money rather than saved it. That is genuinely valuable. The discipline of paying a mortgage every month, even if the financial return is modest, has helped many people accumulate more equity than they ever would have accumulated in a savings account they had open access to. But the forced savings argument is not the same as the investment argument, and confusing the two is where the misconception takes root. There is also the leverage factor, which is the reason homeownership's financial return is often more complicated than a straight comparison of returns suggests. When you buy a $400,000 home with a $80,000 down payment, you are controlling a $400,000 asset with $80,000 of your own money. If that home appreciates by 4.3% in a year, the $7,200 gain accrues on the full property value, not just your down payment, which is a much higher return on your actual cash invested. That is the genuine financial advantage of owning real estate, and it is real. The problem is that the leverage works in both directions, amplifying losses just as it amplifies gains, and it is offset significantly by the carrying costs, the transaction costs, and the extended periods where the home's value barely moves. Here is what the data suggests actually builds wealth. And it is not a secret, it is not complicated, and it is accessible to anyone with an income and a time horizon. The first and most powerful wealth-building tool available to most people is consistent, long-term investment in diversified index funds. The S&P 500 over the past 30 years has returned approximately 10.4% annually, including dividends, and even in the strong real estate decade from 2014 to 2024, one of the best periods for home prices in modern history, homes appreciated at roughly 6 to 7% per year, totaling around 100% over 10 years, while the S&P 500 delivered more than 3 times that return over the same period. These are not cherry-picked numbers. They reflect the compounding power of owning broad slices of the economy through instruments that are liquid, low-cost, and require almost no active management once set up. Someone who invested $500 per month in a simple S&P 500 index fund starting at age 30 would have, at a historical average return, approximately $1.1 million by age 60. That wealth is accessible, it compounds continuously, and it does not require a roof replacement or a property tax bill to maintain. The second wealth-building tool is tax-advantaged accounts, and this is the area where most Americans are most significantly underutilizing what is available to them. A 401k with an employer match is, in financial terms, an instant guaranteed return on every contributed dollar equal to the match percentage, typically 50 to 100% on the first 3 to 6% of income. No investment in history consistently offers that kind of guaranteed return on day one, and yet roughly a third of Americans who have access to an employer match do not contribute enough to capture the full match. A Roth IRA, funded with after-tax dollars and allowed to grow tax-free for decades, can produce retirement income that is entirely untaxed, a structural advantage that compounds significantly over a 30 to 40-year accumulation period. The third is human capital, the earning power that comes from investing in skills, credentials, and career development that compound in the form of higher income over time. Every dollar of additional annual income sustained over a career is, from a wealth-building perspective, more powerful than almost any single investment decision, because higher income enables higher savings rates, which enables faster compounding in all other wealth-building categories. The people who build significant wealth over a career are almost always people who treated both their portfolio and their earning capacity as things worth developing deliberately, rather than just their home equity. None of this is an argument that renting is always better than buying, or that homeownership has no place in a well-constructed financial life. For many people, in many markets, buying a home is the right decision. For stability, for quality of life, for the forced savings mechanism, and, in some cases, for genuine financial return, especially when mortgage rates are low and the local market is strong. The argument is simply that a primary residence is not a substitute for an investment portfolio, and treating it as one, directing the majority of your financial energy and net worth into a single illiquid asset, while underinvesting in the instruments that have historically compounded wealth most reliably, is the financial pattern that keeps the most people from crossing the thresholds that actually change their options in life. Warren Buffett has said that the best investment he ever made was his house, and he also said, in the same conversation, that the stock market has provided far more opportunity for wealth building than real estate ever has. Both of those things are true simultaneously, for different reasons, for different financial functions. Your home is where your life happens. It is a source of stability, identity, and in the right circumstances, a reasonable store of value. But it is not your retirement plan. It is not your emergency fund. And it is not the compounding engine that your financial future depends on, the wealth that actually generates income, that actually gives you options, that actually replaces the paycheck when the paycheck stops. That wealth lives somewhere else. And the clearer that distinction becomes, the more deliberately you can build both.